small group. We'll wait a minute or two here for a couple to join. We only had about 20 sign up, but the benefit is, and we're really excited about this, is that we can have a discussion, in fact, multiple discussions throughout, which we really want to hear from each of you. So we'll definitely tell you to turn on your cameras and your audio during our presentation to hear from you if you feel comfortable. We would really appreciate that. Since this is our first official webinar, we actually have done, Brian and I did a webinar for our interns, and see Sophie is here. That was a good practice run, and so we're still getting used to this, so appreciate you bearing with us. And please, again, since this is a small group, feel free to ask questions in the chat. And then, like I said, we also will be having time for discussion at the end. And so I'm going to share my screen here. Let's get this. Hopefully everyone can see that. So yeah, this, like we said, this is our first in our webinar series this month. We'll be sending out in our newsletter and emails to you as well in a follow-up some other webinars we'll be hosting. And this one, as you know, is on the future of study abroad and ESL. And Brian and I, working in essentially both these in industries, or at least international internship industry, we have a lot we could talk about, and we do talk about all the time. But today we'll just briefly go over what's currently affecting us and our companies as well. But we want to focus more on the global impacts and what's affecting you guys. So please prepare any more questions, type them in the chat throughout this. Here's the outline for today. So like I said, Brian and I will introduce ourselves, go a little bit into our future and what's going on in our company. But then we'll talk about the current state of, we working closely with Japan. What are some indicators we've experienced of how things are going to change in study abroad? And again, this is the time where we'd also love to hear your insight. And also what's affecting the ESL world, since we're dabbling in that as well. And some of you would have been interns for our program this year, so we can talk about that and the implications for next year's program. So again, with this smaller group, we've got lots to talk about, and we'd love discussion and get people involved rather than doing the traditional webinar of just us talking. So without further ado, I'm Matt, program director for Come On Out Japan, and been working with Brian since 2015, back when Come On Out was just starting, and he interviewed me, and I said, what is this program? I'm interested, and I've enjoyed our talk, and I really enjoyed my time in 2015 in Japan, and obviously I've stuck around ever since, and it's been really, really exciting and really enjoyable. So I'll hand it over to Brian for his introduction.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. It's good to see everybody on the webinar. Hope we have some useful information for everybody. But anyway, my name is Brian Nufus. I'm the founder of Come On Out. I'm originally from northern Wisconsin, very small town. Really enjoy the outdoors. Been self-employed most of my life in one way or another. I think I had my first business when I was about 12 years old. Had my first study abroad when I was a sophomore in high school, and also studied abroad when I was at university in Wisconsin as well. So,
Yeah, and like Brian said, we're both really passionate about traveling and the experience, of studying abroad and living in another country. And as you guys know, Brian is currently in Japan, in Tokyo, and I'm currently in Los Angeles. And while I'm bummed about not being able to go to Japan and do another year of study abroad, we do think there are some really cool opportunities to still foster, the global mindset and still learn through virtual experiences, virtual study abroad, or virtual internships to create this international mindset, which I think everyone here is interested in doing as well. So currently, as you can see on the slide, Brian and I with Come On Out, we have Come On Out Japan. Again, I think everyone here is familiar with that, and bummed it's not running this year, but we'll talk about the future of that. And we've also launched Come On Out English and Come On Out eTEFL. you guys might know about that as well. And if not, please check out our websites, follow us on social media and all that. Brian and I have been teaching ESL for quite some time, both online and in person. And we thought, now with so many students learning from home, we'd love to take that online. And we'll talk about, again, the future of ESL and where that industry currently stands. And then TEFL. We run a TEFL course, and I know there are actually a question or two in the registration about TEFL, and we will get to that as well. And then our other venture is Coming Out Adventures, which Brian started, which is about outdoor experiences, educational, environmental experiences that also connect people from different countries. Brian's had people come from Japan to go hunting and hiking and camping with him in Colorado as part of our first Coming Out Adventure programs. Anything you want to add on those, Brian?
You had said Come On Out Japan isn't really running, but you are working on the remote camp. It's our next week. Our first remote camp. I know that's coming later, but
yeah, in this next slide here, Brian's right. We are doing a remote camp, and I think almost all of you might be familiar with that or be participating. And we'll have some updates about how it goes. Our first weekend is this upcoming weekend with students online. We won't go into too much details, but this is our first virtual endeavor. And it's very exciting taking an experience like Global English Camp online in a little bit different setting. So really excited to see how it works out. And that's with our partners Toshin and Come On Up. We also had some programs initially planned for the summer in Vietnam, Coming Out Vietnam. And unfortunately that, of course, is postponed as well. But Coming Out Korea is in the future. We have a global environmental English camp ready to go, a textbook ready to go that we hope to do in Japan this summer as well, where students actually got outdoors and learned English. And Brian and I will be talking a little bit more about the implications that for these programs in the future, but the environmental English camp could very well go online this fall. So there's a lot of things we have going on to kind of keep up with the current state of the world. And speaking of that, Brian, wanted to go in here and ask you, besides canceling, or I should say suspending our 2020 English camp till 2021, how has coronavirus affected our company and our goals and vision?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, the fact is that what we're doing today, we would never have even anticipated 3-4 months ago. We had to completely change our business plan overnight, basically. Which if you look at some of these other things like the Come On Out English and the TEFL program, these are things that we had been working on before. We had planted the seed, we had started these projects, but really the coronavirus gave us the opportunity to actually be able to spend time on these other things. So once the Global English Camp was canceled, it was kind of like, okay, what do we do now? And, I think probably a lot of people can kind of relate to that. A lot of things have canceled, our lives have been changed. And not only as a company do we have to diversify and have many different things going on at the same time, because we don't know what's going to happen in this market. It's possible that the online market disappears just as quickly as it came here, right? If something great does happen and all of a sudden the coronavirus isn't a problem, not that everything, is going to go back to exactly the way it was, but all of a sudden, if the travel restrictions are raised and all of a sudden there's going to be a huge surge of people traveling, well then, the online thing won't be as important, at least for maybe a little bit. So that's a possibility, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But as individuals too, we had that webinar, what was it, last week? And, that was some of the questions we got about the job market for graduates and upcoming graduates. And I guess, some advice I could give as far as my experience, what we've had over the last 3 or 4 months is you got to diversify yourself. You got to have a lot of things going on. There should be an internship in the works, part-time work, passion projects. I feel like everyone should have 3 or 4 things going on at one time is some advice I could give. Tarek, he was on CNBC, one of our past interns. There was a panel of 4 recent graduates, and I think they were all from, really, really good universities as well. And, they were kind of going through their issues that they've been coming up with. No job, not being able to find jobs. What's the job market like? And that was one of the things that Tarek was doing. He had like 2 or 3 different things going on as well. If one of those things doesn't pan out, which it didn't, you got other things to kind of fall back on.
Yeah. And yeah, speaking of diversifying, and I've learned that from Brian too, and we share similar mindsets, but I would also reiterate his advice and have multiple things going on. I've done that throughout my life as well, and it can be a lot to juggle, but when things like this happen, we have different things to fall back to, and different experiences to diversify our resume too, for those of you who are just graduating. So I do recommend that as well. And I also wanted to say, Brian, talking about Tarek's experience, our past interns, and we've talked to many of our past interns about their experiences. For those of you in this webinar right now, we empathize with if you're graduating and jumping into the job market, it's really tough right now, of course. And if you're still in school, it's tough. And we're going to talk about that as well. And so Brian and I, we feel fortunate to have, we're at a stage where we've been working for a while, but for you guys, we really wish you the best of luck. And speaking of that, we will be opening up internships again in the fall for coming out, for if anyone's interested. So a lot of stuff going on. And Brian, before we move on, I want to quickly go back to our remote camp, which is really exciting. Like I said, 2 weekends in August, and we're going to see how this goes. We've got a great team. One of our team members is attending this webinar, Sophie. And it's really been exciting and creating this entirely new project. But what are some of the other potential virtual programs that we're thinking about, just to give everyone an idea of what could happen in the future?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny, some of these things that we worked on 1 and 2 years ago, for other camps, like the environmental camp, now those things are coming into play, and they're going to be remote. So we have a high school in Japan that wants to do an environmental camp. So we're going to kind of change that program around a little bit to be done remotely with a group of high school students. We are working with some universities and colleges in Japan now. So, I think Japan, and Matt, I apologize if this is coming up later, but universities in Japan at least are feeling there's a gap in their curriculum because their students aren't able to go abroad. So what they want is to design a program that they can do online. They still want the experience of talking and working and exchanging cultures with foreign students. So right now we're working on a remote program that will run through a university curriculum where we'll connect university students from around the world with university students here in Japan. And I think that's an exciting program that could really change, I guess, this hole or this gap in universities. And, I'm not sure if there's universities in the US that are thinking about doing something along these same lines, but I know that we're working to find out.
Yeah, no, and we were going to talk about later but that's the perfect transition. And, we're really happy to hear from Japanese universities that want to still connect and do these virtual programs, to have this cross-cultural exchange online rather than in person. And obviously there's some benefits to that and some major disadvantages to that. And we'll actually, at the end of this webinar, that's a big discussion question we'd like to hear from you guys on. But for now, since many of you are interested in Japan and the current state, or going to Japan, whether it's through our program or another internship or teaching over there, and since Brian lives there, we thought we'd talk briefly about that. The Olympics, we'll wait for the next slide to talk about that one, but we know many of you been itching to travel just like us and have been keeping updated on the restrictions, and obviously everything's still restricted. An interesting one is that Hawaii, I just read this today, an article today, is planning on opening to Japanese tourists soon. The first kind of its kind, and Japan is working with Hawaii to connect. So hopefully that's a good indicator. Obviously, Hawaii is a popular tourist destination for Japan, being where it is. But that's just one update. And like Brian said, with universities in Japan, they're constantly trying to figure out how to connect. University of Tokyo, for example, probably the most popular, famous university in Japan, all their study abroad is currently suspended with no updates. But they just announced an online learning program with the University of Queensland. It's an extra cost for the students, but it is an English learning program. So there are these things happening. And obviously schools in Japan being this, Tokyo's kind of a hotspot right now, but otherwise students are still in school, in case anyone was curious. High school students, I mean, attending school, but in half the amount of attendance half the week. That's just a quick update there. But Brian, what I wanted to ask you here was about, Japanese mentality and how it's affecting, you're married to someone who's Japanese, you're living there, you've lived there for a while, how's the mentality over there about study abroad and traveling and connecting?
Well, unless there's major changes in the coronavirus, I think that a lot of people in Japan, and I have, a lot of, students, both in Japan and from Vietnam. But I think the Japanese mentality is, especially at the universities, in schools, I don't think they plan on doing a lot of international traveling, or essentially, I mean, definitely sending their children abroad. I don't think that they plan on doing that, at least as the majority, for anywhere in the near future. I mean, the universities we're working with right now on some of these remote programs, they wouldn't even take into effect until fall of next year. So the universities are already planning on the fact that they're not going to be sending their university students abroad even next year. So I think the mentality is very much more conservative. If you look at the numbers, you can talk about testing and everything, but for the most part, the numbers are not as dramatic here. Everyone's wearing masks. The mentality of traveling just is not really in the picture right now here in Japan.
Yeah.
You wouldn't notice it walking around. There's people out and about and all that too. But yeah, 99.9% of people, I think, wear masks here.
Yeah.
But the concern to go to, like, let's just pick a country, for example, the United States. I don't think there's anyone right now in Japan that is interested in sending their child or kid to a school in the US for a study abroad program.
Yeah.
For many reasons, but I'm sure that list of countries is longer.
Yeah. And hopefully it'll change soon, and hopefully that may require us over here to wear our masks and be responsible. But that's also why it surprised me so much that Hawaii was talking with Japan about. Obviously, it's tourism. It's much different. It's very, it's your own choice. It's a more of an isolated place, and Hawaii's starting to control the virus, but still very interesting. And with that, actually, I wanted to talk about the Tokyo Olympics and a couple other things that kind of serve as our key indicators for our program. A lot of you, names wise, for the 2020 program probably saw in our emails and updates on our website that we were following the guidelines of the Olympics as this major event, and obviously and seeing what they were doing. And this is constantly changing too. So Brian, I was going to hand it to you to talk about a little bit our key indicators before we move on.
Well, as far as the middle one, the Tokyo Olympics is a big one, and I don't know what the percentages of that happening next year, but quite frankly, I think there's a really good chance that the Tokyo Olympics are not going to happen next year. I just put a clip here for a recent article, from the Japan Times, and a quote out of there. I mean, if you read that, that's pretty cut and dry. That was from like July 22nd.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I was talking with one of our past interns, one of our alumni she actually participated in our program a couple of years. She was going to be a Fulbright student this year, and it's been postponed globally until a minimum of January of 2021. And as a government-sponsored program, a U.S.-sponsored program, I think a Fulbright is actually a really good indicator. It's put through the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs in the U.S. It's been going on since the 40s. So if you keep up to date with that, basically, if our government isn't allowing people to travel, so the Fulbright program won't happen, and that's also related to the travel restriction. Yeah. I think hers was, she was going to be going to Korea. So I think also for us, that's a very good indicator, because we have a lot of university students and interns in our program that come from the US, Canada, and the UK are the primary countries. Right now, you cannot come into Japan from any of these countries as a tourist, right? So it's just not happening at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good to follow these, and I'm sure you guys have been following your own school policies and any programs that you were thinking about doing, or any personal travel that you're thinking about doing. And we'd love to hear from that in a bit. But first, we want to do a quick Zoom poll And so let me launch that. I know we could just do this through chatting, but let's just try the Zoom poll. So we just want to see of you, the handful of people here, are you currently a student? Are you graduated? And also what you're doing in terms of the fall term. We talked again. Brian mentioned our last webinar, which why most of you hadn't heard about it is because it was for our intern team right now that's been working with us this summer, and it's overwhelmingly not doing school. Besides, one of our interns is a nursing student, and she is required to do that. And that's tough. Looks like everyone here is graduated. So doesn't really work out for your fall experiences, but we'd love to hear about what you're doing in graduating, what your thoughts are. So we'll talk about that there. That's fun poll results here. Well, we appreciate you attending this and talking while you are graduated, since we are kind of talking about the current state of abroad programs. And we'll bring that up in a sec. So we'll briefly go over these, since most of you guys are graduated, so it might not apply, but for the sake of recording for our university students who are attending our program, or those on our subscriber list that are interested in checking it out, we'll go over this briefly. But like I said, we did this poll in our last webinar, and overwhelmingly all learning was seemingly online, except for the specific ones. So Stanford, Brian mentioned one of our past interns that's there. Let us know that it's about 50% that are allowed on campus, and it's really the essential engineering, medical exceptions. Cambridge and Oxford, really interesting. Not sure if there's any people here today that go to those, but they're inviting students back, and it's a student choice. Everything's going to be offered online. It's all going to be accommodated, but they are currently, allowing students to come back, which I thought was really interesting. And then Toronto are doing all online, but they're having different types of classes. Some are asynchronous, which means self-paced, and some are synchronous, which are, typical classroom structure. The timeliness matters. So there's a lot of different interesting things, and obviously we're going to ask you guys what was currently happening at your school, and maybe you'll still know, but we'll get to that later, and we'll move on for now. So the study abroad programs, a lot of people call us a study abroad program, but we're really an international internship, right? You're actually getting job experience out there. You're not taking classes unless you're taking our Japanese courses after school, but you're doing the teaching, you're doing the work, and getting this real world experience. My alumni, UCLA, all 2020 programs are canceled, the year programs. What I found in my research is that 2021 programs are all pending. There's the official statement from schools seem to all be the same. And I'm also on a forum talking with study abroad advisors that are all kind of in the same boat. We don't know what to say. We're going to tell people that we want to hold these, but we can't confirm nor deny it, which is really just the state of the world. UCL was, I thought, the most interesting. They have a lot of international students, and many of you have probably read about the international student plight right now of kind of being stuck abroad, and they're not really in the best situation. But UCL is encouraging those to return home, but they can stay, and UCL will provide them housing and classes based on if they feel safer staying at UCL, which I thought was really interesting, and really the only outlier in the research I did on schools. Study abroad providers, just to mention real quick, since even though you guys are in school, you might be interested in doing more abroad programs. One case study, Council of International Educational Exchange, so CIEE. That's a huge nonprofit study abroad. Maybe you guys have heard about it. They, when this coronavirus happened, laid off most of their workers. They furloughed almost their entire team, including their offices in Japan. And so they're much smaller right now and struggling on what to do. They're not offering anything virtual yet, but we'll see. Other study abroad programs, again, not school related, are not offering refunds or deposits. This is really interesting that there's multiple that had to cancel and they just can't survive. So there's a lot of companies out there struggling. So it goes back to Brian's point of doing different things, and that's what hopefully we're doing. So again, I had a question here to see if anyone was signed up for a study abroad program this fall, but it looks like everyone's graduated. If you are, while I move on to the next slide, go ahead and type in the chat. But I figured, unless you're graduated,
You want to hear a story about someone going somewhere?
yeah, I think that's what we're really trying to say here.
Anybody
Um,
going-
yeah, who's going somewhere? So no one signed up, but I wanted to before we move on to the ESL realm, which I kind of wanted to get to before 3:30, at least PST 3:30. Since we'll skip that question, we'll get to something else later. Is what I've been thinking about, just to have you guys think about for a discussion at the end, is, hopefully with this shift, and as Brian mentioned, is this going to last? Is it, or school's going to keep doing online programs? My thinking is that it's a shift of where to what, and that's what we're trying to do coming out is, a lot of people are doing study abroad programs for the destination, and universities sell it like that. I know when I almost went to Korea, I was studying the language, but it was really about, hey, you want to go here and look at this. It's like a trip to Seoul, and it was less focused about the what you get out of it, and more where to go. And so that's what I'm hoping. That's what we're hoping with these virtual programs. And so would love for you guys to hear your opinions on that shift as well. But since no one is currently doing study abroad, it looks like, with no one on the chat, we'll move on to the current job market. And maybe some of you would have some experiences here. We'd love to hear about that, specifically in ESL, which Brian and I obviously work in. So Brian, my first question, more general, and again, if you guys have questions on this, since this might be more relevant to everyone attending here, please type it in the chat, and then we'll bring up some video too and do some discussions. But Brian, what are you thinking right now in the current state of the world? Like, is anything different in what employers are looking for recent graduates?
Yeah, obviously there's different industries that are probably a little bit different. I don't actually think that there's a lot that has changed in that aspect. Certainly, an employer may ask you, what have you been doing over the last 5 or 6 months? And the more things that you can provide shows that you're willing to do anything, to do whatever it takes. I think that looks really good to an employer. But for the most part, they're looking for experience. They're looking for things on your resume that show that you're a hardworking person and that you're making it happen. So I think that's where the online things come into play right now, is anything you can be doing online, whether you're a freelance writer or you're an ESL teacher, or, those are easy things, I think, right now for anybody to get on their resume. There's the business right now in online education over the last 5 months has to be the biggest growing sector of the market on the planet. I mean, it is just insanely the growth that's happened. I mean, it was big before this, but it just worked after the coronavirus. So
yeah, and I'll bring up a question to everyone here in a sec, but just to get a little more specific now, since Brian and I are, like we've mentioned, we've been working in ESL for quite some time, but obviously there's a little bit of a shift now. What about the current status of the ESL industry? What do you think about that and its future?
Oh, I mean, I guess a little bit about what I was previously talking about. The ESL industry is booming. There's still, the number of students hasn't changed, but now it's being done online. So I could bring up multiple programs that we've talked with, both in multiple different countries, that have all canceled. They were all canceled this summer. And a lot of them are kind of doing what we're doing. They're starting online webinar series. They're doing some online kind of camps, dabbling in that. We're all hopeful for next summer, but the truth is it might not happen. So what are we going to do? There's a huge gap in education, and it's going to be filled by online camps, one-on-one lessons. There's a huge industry going on in the teaching realm.
Yeah.
So specifically the ESL job market, is absolutely booming right now.
Yeah. And and since everyone here, I believe, is newsletter subscribers, as you've seen, we've kind of, with this booming industry and so much opportunity, but also at the same time, so much competition, because there's a lot of people that want to teach ESL online right now, because it's a great thing to do. You can teach from home. I would just be sitting here after this maybe and have a student come on, and you get to meet people from around the world. Um, you get a lot of different experience in teaching, whether it's conversational, which is really fun. It doesn't feel like work, or teaching to a test and kind of learning about that industry of the English tests around the world, or teaching business English, which Brian and I do, and learning about international businesses and how they use English. And then, of course, just students, a variety of age level. There's so much, and that's why we've been trying to provide at least a few each newsletter job opportunities that we find, and not only that we do our research, but also that we have connections to that are looking for these teachers. So I bring that up also because I know on the most popular questions on or that I've gotten recently, as well as for this webinar, would be about ESL and finding the job there. And one question, just to bring it up real quick, that was very specific, we got submitted, was the TEFL certificate. And as you know, of course, we're offering these courses, but what was interesting to me in this question was, is it compulsory to have before teaching? And a few years ago, and Brian can speak upon this too, I would have said it's not necessarily compulsory. But now, more than ever, it is, because of this competition and having teaching experience, because there's so much need for students and so many, or teachers, and there's so many teachers that want to do this. Now it's getting really competitive, which is interesting that it's happening at the same time as more opportunities arise. Brian, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, most companies, they ask for either a graduation certificate, right, that you're a graduate. I know most of you are graduates, or a TEFL certificate. So it's very important, I think, for undergraduates to have it as well. I'll go back to the JET program. A lot of people ask about the JET program when they apply for the Global English Camp. And JET's standpoint, either at least here in Japan, is that it's not a requirement. However, it might differentiate you from other applicants. And I think that has to go with, I consider a TEFL certificate almost to be like experience. It's just another thing that you can put on your resume that shows that you were, out there doing things, and that you got your, more training in the field that you're interested in. It might get you more money. It might get you a better position. There's a lot of things I think it could do for you.
Yeah. And yeah, it goes back to Brian and I, just our advice of doing as much as you can. And we know it's tough though in this current state. And actually right now, that's why I'd like to kind of on the spot switch up a discussion questions. Because of that poll, we realized we don't have any current students. So a little bit different. I'd like to ask if you're comfortable sharing, does anyone here, and this I think would not only be helpful for the other attendees, but also for us. And when we share this recorded, it would probably be very helpful for others that are experiencing the same thing. So we'd like anyone to jump in at this time, turn your mic on, or camera, or both, and share with us any experience you've had in graduating and in the current job market with everything being virtual. And I'm sure many of you stuck at home. Would anyone like to share? Please just jump on. Love to hear. Yes, more specifically, the question would be any experience in, if you're looking for a job currently, and how that's kind of been affected by, the current state of the world.
Where you accidentally turn on.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Sophie.
Hey. Oh, pardon the background. I was.
Love it.
I had a family chat with my little cousins earlier. I was trying to be funny with the shark attack. But yeah, so Matt knows a little bit about this because we've been talking, but I, before the pandemic hit and everything, was actually doing puzzle design for some local escape rooms in the Boston area, which was really fun. And then I was also, doing front of house and working the rooms too, right? Because a lot of them can't really employ someone as like a puzzle designer full time. They expect you to also work the rooms and interact with the people. And so at the start of the pandemic hitting, back when we thought things would close down for like 2 weeks, the place I was working at had to lay everyone off because the escape room can't stay open, and as far as I know, they're still closed actually. And so when I got laid off from there, and again thought that this whole shutdown was to be for like 2 weeks, I was looking for other jobs where I wouldn't have to interact so heavily with, humans who could potentially transmit the disease, places that could still stay open. And so I got employed at a carpentry and repair shop. But then, like, right as I was supposed to go in for my first day and do the shop tour, that's when all of a sudden everyone was like, "No, man, this is a whole quarantine. People are going to be staying home for months on end." And so then, my boss over there was like, "Hey, so I can't actually take you on right now. We're going to have to stay closed for a bit, but like I'll call you when things are open." So then when I was at home for that much time, I was kind of working on a backlog of digital projects I had going, because like really I have experience in digital games, so I'm kind of a jack of many trades, and really I have experience in digital games, and so I was working either on personal projects or helping. Coming from MIT, I have a lot of software based friends, and so they would need someone to help with design elements of those things, and I would do that. I helped some student groups from MIT that I had been a part of as an undergrad. I graduated in 2019. That I had been a part of as an undergrad. I helped them put some of their content online, and was just kind of busy with all of that stuff. And then finally, as stuff started to open up again in the Boston area, I started to go back to the repair shop, and that's what I've been doing. As of right now, we're still only open 3 days a week, and well, we're open full time, but all the employees are only going in 3 days a week, because we have some of us going in that we're trying to stagger how many people are in the shop at once, because it's a pretty open space, because it's a carpentry shop, but still we don't want it to be too crowded. But actually next week we're going to be having a meeting to discuss the future, and if people will start coming back to work 5 days a week, or how many people we're going to allow to be working at once and stuff like that. So that'll be exciting. But yeah, that's what my experience is like. I basically changed what I was doing entirely, because I had to right now. And maybe in the future I'll go back to the escape rooms, maybe a different one than the one that I was working at before. But as far as I know, they're all still completely closed because they just can't be open right now. I do know that there's some escape rooms shifting their stuff to online. I might try to get into that, but right now I kind of like where I am at the carpentry shop, because it's even though it's not like what I studied, it pays me pretty well, and I have enough free time to work on the remote English camp or other projects of my own, and so it is something good for me to be doing right now. And like it seems like it's not going to be going away anytime soon, unless there's like a drastic spike or something, which could happen in the fall, because a few universities in the Boston area are having some or close to all of their students coming back. I think it's BU is actually.
Oh.
Last I heard, they might have changed this, but last I heard they were planning on actually being open, or at least giving students the option to come back. I know, I don't know the full MIT story, but like through the grapevine of like my friends who are still undergrads, apparently they're only allowing, like, I don't know what their metric is for like who's allowed to come back and who's not, but freshmen and seniors are coming back. The ones who are allowed back on campus are going to be here in the fall, and then sophomores and juniors in the spring. And the reason they're doing that is because they don't know if they'll be open completely in the spring. And so they think like if anyone should have like a taste of the on-campus life, it should be the freshmen and seniors.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. But they might end also the fall semester at Thanksgiving. So,
yeah, that's I think Harvard is employing a similar. There's a few schools employing that freshman senior trade so that they can attend and keep it at 50% at least. But interesting about BU. But thanks for sharing, Sophie.
And also, like I said, BU might have changed their stance. I don't really know anyone there anymore. but that, like, I remember for a while everyone was like shocked, like, oh my gosh, how are they doing this?
Yeah.
But
Oh,
Matt,
yeah.
can you
yeah.
quickly have another poll? I'm curious on how many of the graduates have a full-time job versus a part-time job or no job. I'm curious to see out of the group how many.
Yeah, I'll quickly add that.
And then I think somebody else had a chat
chat question. And also wanted to say, Sophie, it seems like just like me and Brian, you're also doing a bunch of different stuff to keep up with the times, which is great. And so I'm gonna edit the current poll real quick, and Brian, if you want to take the chat from Victoria while I edit the poll.
Victoria, can you come in and kind of just make kind of a brief update on your personal situation?
Hi, yeah. So I'm Victoria here. Let me turn on my mic. I'm my camera not looking that good, but it's okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I also graduated last year, and so I studied public policy. But like my original plan was to kind of work for a year, save up, and then go abroad to teach. So that was the goal by fall. Um, but that's changed, of course. And so I've just been kind of looking into more full-time work. I work part-time right now at a museum. And so last month we reopened, but we are keeping pretty strict kind of rules and guidelines that are mandated by the city. And I'm in St. Louis, Missouri right now. So that's really good. I'm really thankful for that. And yeah, like usually my job is very public facing, and I like work with people who come in, and I kind of play with the kids, that kind of stuff. And we actually have an exhibit. So our exhibit is closed for the kids, but we reopen the rest of the museum. And so we're keeping like a 10% capacity and limited hours that we're open. But still it's a little bit kind of like I'm really hesitant to go in whenever I have to go in because I still have to, interact with so many people. And even with the masks, I mean, there's still like a small chance something could happen. But it's been good so far, and I've just kind of been looking around to see what's out there.
Have you seen any of the listings that we put on any newsletter for online English teaching? I know you're looking at actually studying abroad. Do you have teaching experience that you have on your resume, and or are you looking at, or have you applied for any of these online kind of like freelance teachers positions?
I haven't. I've been meaning to, but I've just kind of been putting it off because I know so many people have been applying since the whole shutdown started and all that. And I know I have like the experience they probably look for, but it's just getting started and applying and all that. But yeah.
I hope that we didn't make it sound like, oh, it's so competitive, you're not going to find a position. With the fact
No,
that it's becoming so competitive, you also have to understand that there's a billion students looking for an English teacher. I mean, that's a big number. There's what was the number? I think there's 500 million students in China alone that are studying English online. So it's competitive, sure, but the number of students, the market is just massive. Just massive.
I'm gonna apply. I'm gonna do it.
Anyone else want to put their face on this webinar with any update of what you're currently doing or a story to share?
Hiya.
Hey, Mohammed.
My name is Mohammed. Sorry, my webcam is not working, so I do apologize for that. Thank you for that. It was very, very interesting. It's 11:45 p.m. in London, by the way, but it's not as bad as the early wake ups. So yeah, my name is Mohammed. I'm from the UK. I'm very, very passionate about teaching abroad. Honestly, when I first heard about this was through my friends at UCL. So I studied at UCL. I graduated last year, and a lot of my friends did the remote opportunity coming out Japan, and they've absolutely loved it. You know, they kept telling me to do it, but I've just been, you know, so busy with internships. So I currently work in banking, and I've just been so busy, and a lot of students as well actually at UCL, you know, they'd love to do this program, but then there's the element of, you know, you've got to do an internship, you know, at a bank or a law firm or whatever, because you need that pressure of getting that job when you graduate. So while I'm happy that I did do that, you know, I saw this summer as an opportunity to do the Coming Out Japan, and I applied and I was successful and I was so happy. But then obviously the coronavirus happened, which is still, you know, fine. So which is why when I saw this remote opportunity, I thought, you know what, this is something that, you know, definitely resonates with me, because, you know, I spent 18 years in London and I had never left the country, never. And then I took a gap year before university. And then during that gap year, I actually went to Brazil to volunteer for the Olympics. I was teaching kids English,
Yeah.
and I was doing that sort of stuff. And then when I went back to uni, you know, my passion for like teaching abroad and um, especially teaching students English, you know, grew significantly. So then I went to India and I did the same thing. And then for like the last 2 years, it just went, you know, I just prioritized my studies and my work and my career. But, you know, if I'm honest, I see myself, you know, I'll be more happy doing something where what I've done in Brazil or India, where I'm teaching abroad, where rather than what I'm currently doing. But you know, it's an element of taking a risk, I guess, between, you know, what you're currently doing. Are you willing to give that up to do something that you really, really enjoy? So I feel like now I'm in an opportunity where I will definitely stick to what I am doing, but I would love to learn more about, you know, the remote opportunities. And, you know, like you said, there's like huge potential for people to become, you know, teachers to foreign people. So yeah, that's why, like, you know, I've decided to take it seriously, even though I've got work on Monday morning, and I'm staying up for these late night calls. And but it's definitely something that I really, really want to explore, because not only have I heard good feedback from a lot of my friends who've done it, I think you guys have a very good relationship with UCL. There tends to be a lot of emails from them about coming out Japan as well. So that's good. But yeah, so that's why I'm really, really happy to learn more about the different opportunities that is present.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for staying up. And it sounds like you have a similar mentality to us as well. You know, we're all doing different things, keeping our minds open. And Mohammed, I had a similar experience too, where I was working in film, and I started doing ESL stuff, and then I did Come On Out, and took a chance to go with that. But just having multiple things open and having those different paths is important. And so glad you're doing that, and hopefully it's not putting too much of a stress on you if you do the remote camp while also working. But yeah, thanks.
No, honestly, no. I think it's like the best bit of the week when the emails come through over the work emails. But yeah, honestly, I think that's one of the. I'm not complaining. I think I'm quite lucky that I did do the internship, and then I was offered the grad role, because it's very, very difficult to be able to get a grad job now.
Yeah.
But honestly, in terms of like enjoyment, I see myself, you know, this opportunity, when I read it, it was just a perfect fit. Like every email that I got, I was like, wait, is this, it was like bringing me back to what I enjoy doing in Brazil and in India. So yeah, I'm a massive fan of this program. And even though it didn't work out this summer, I think, you know, the remote opportunities and the online courses, and it's something that I'm very, very fascinated about.
No, that's great to hear.
You never know when you will be able to step up and enjoy your passions. I graduated with a finance major, international business minor. I spent about 17 years in the real estate and mortgage banking industry, and started Coming Out about 6 years ago. And I've enjoyed the last 6 years. I think I enjoyed the 17 years of experience, but I've had a lot of fun over the last 6 years. Let me just say that.
Yeah, no, that's really
You
good
never
to
know.
hear.
You never know when you're able to jump back into that thing that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I enjoy that.
Yeah, and always good to keep an open mind. And Uh, does anyone, I know we're nearing the 4 p.m. or midnight for Mohammed, but and different for everyone else, but the last 10 minutes or so here, does anyone else want to share their experiences? If not, I have
Too, right, Matt?
I have one more poll. Sorry, Bren?
Oh, I think we got the results of the poll.
Yeah, so the results here, I can share them again, was it looks like most people doing part-time here and looking for remote, no in-person stuff. I figured no one would select those, but I put it on there anyways, just in case. I wanted to see how many people were open to doing stuff like that. Obviously, it's different depending on where you are, but at least in here in the States, UK, Canada, it's probably pretty similar. But yeah. And of course, we'll continue to share opportunities in our newsletter for people that are looking for stuff. And you can always feel free to reach out to us. Brian and I always, people reach out to us all the time personally, and we don't want people to feel not comfortable doing that, because we love responding to people and hearing stories and hearing experiences, because it helps us too. And that's our goal, is to help people find these remote things right now, for sure. The last poll, Brian, do you want to say anything before my last poll?
I was going to say that really resonates with me. There's almost not a week that goes by where I don't get some kind of a message from an alumni. Julia is a perfect example. She sent a really nice message a couple weeks, maybe it was about a month ago, about the Fulbright position that she got. She was awarded a Fulbright, and she said that she doesn't feel like she would have ever had that opportunity if she did not participate in our program. Not only the experience, but really helped out her application as well. Obviously, I think she would have got it anyway. She's such a great person, but yeah. We get a lot of things like that. So I guess just in general, I'm looking forward to, having a summer's program.
I know, yeah.
And then how many past interns were like, that come back year after year, a couple that have come back for the second year or the third year. Mohammed, this resonates with what you had to say about that position. We've had lawyers, medical students, graduate students that have come back. And that's one of the big topics. Like, don't you need to get an internship in your field? Paul Hork is another example. He's a med student. There's so many of those. Like, are you sure you want to come back? Jacob was another one. You're in law school. Don't you have to go to like a law firm to get a position? So that's funny.
Yeah.
Kind of living it as long as you can and enjoying what you're passionate about.
Yeah. And at least locally for me here, you talk about, Mohammed, the relations with our universities, which is super important to Brian and myself. Going around trying to, now recruiting this fall, and normally I would go out to Cambridge area and see Sophie, but now, that's probably not going to happen. So that's a bummer, and we'll obviously stay in touch through emails. And so we appreciate you mentioning that, Mohammed, about, our relationship with schools, because that's like the most, so important to us. And we really respect all the people working at the schools and how kind they are to our program too. So we owe it to them as well. But anyways, we have one more. I want to do this last poll, even though it's a little different, like I said, since all of you are graduated, but I'd still like to get a quick answer here about virtual study abroad programs. So obviously you guys are graduated, might not apply as much, but would you participate in one? Simple question. And then what are your general thoughts on virtual study abroad programs or virtual internship programs? And we'll do one quick discussion before we end, just to hear a thought, because this is a big thing that's on our mind.
While everyone's filling that in, I just wanted to tell everybody that we're trying to do our best to include cool and fun and interesting information in our newsletters, and we actually have a really good team of interns that are helping us with that too. After the last newsletter, I can't remember, Matt, do you remember what the percentage was? We have a really high ratio of people that open our newsletter.
Yeah.
It's like significant. It's like, I don't know,
70% or something.
70%. And it's like our list is thousands, it's alumni and people that have applied to the program throughout the years and stuff like that. So we're doing our best to continue to offer kind of a little bit of, piece of Japan in the newsletters. We got blogs in there, interesting stories, and then recent articles for updates and stuff like that too. So we'll continue to try to include fun, useful, interesting information in our newsletter.
Yeah, we definitely will. And like Brian was saying, like, we think these experiences, even though Brian was joking about, don't you need to do a law internship? But they have this global mindset, and a lot of companies are looking for experiences like that. And it is important. Caltech, just down the street from me, really small school in California. We're the only program that they allow their grad students to do, based on a case of one of our students, Schwen, who he's studying nuclear physics, and he did our program 2 years in a row. And they said, you know what, we just allowed it after he explained to us the importance of it and how it relates to his work. So we constantly are talking to schools about that. And Caltech's an interesting situation since they now know me very well. And it's kind of a fun thing that they put on our info session rather than me. They talk about it, even though this is their only program they allow outside of the Caltech world. So we're also trying to create that mentality too among schools. Anyway, so this poll real quick. Participate in virtual study abroad. Oh, sorry, I have to share the results with everyone, even though there's just a few of us here. So yes and maybe for participating, that's good to hear. But number 2 and 3 were really what was interesting to us. And number 2 is, those numbers, even though there's just 5, a small sample size, that is, exactly about my mind. Wouldn't you say, Brian? Like the middle, yes, middle, no. And that's where the industry is at too. Is it going to work? Can it be as effective? And I imagine the people that said no, it's, you're not there. You're not there. You're not going around Japan. You're not going to Kamakura one day to learn about the history of Japan's former capital, or you're not, participating in our Japanese cooking classes or visiting museums in person. But we're hoping, and then some of you doing this remote camp, that we'll see how this works and how effective it is as cross-cultural exchange.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Maybe it can be effective as far as for the foreign students, like the Japanese students, and if English is their goal. If you look at the Global English Camp, one of our major goals is to get them to increase their speaking ability. Maybe it's really effective in that manner, but most certainly as far as the experience for the interns coming, maybe part of that question is based on that as well, which makes a lot of sense. It's lacking in the experience aspect of it, right? And there's no way to, as a person that's itching to travel right now, today, get me on a plane somewhere, that's the real bummer about these programs. That we'll never be able to fill in the gap there. So that's a very interesting survey. Thanks everybody for giving feedback.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's, I reiterate Brian's statement exactly. I would love to do, I'm finding creative ways, and hopefully everyone else is finding creative ways to stay not so stir crazy and see some places, whether it's going camping, which is safe, but doing things that are safe and socially responsible during these times. Does anyone, we are running out of time here, but based on that question, we did want to hold a discussion. Again, we kind of shifted our webinar because of everyone being graduate, which is great. And everyone who shared, thank you. That was really helpful. And actually, we would have loved to hold 2 separate webinars on each topic. So does anyone have any comments about a virtual study abroad or virtual internships that are focused on international experience? Does anyone have any thoughts about what would make those more effective, or what, some major downfalls that should be considered to be changed to help? And we'll just take a minute or two, maybe 1 or 2 people, since we are at the hour mark. Does anyone have anything there? That was one of our main discussions. Yeah, so.
Yeah, so I actually do have experience building like virtual experiences. A lot of it during undergrad when I used to work at the media lab as an undergrad researcher. And then also just stuff like personal projects. And yeah, I think it is very conditional on what your budget is, what your constraints are, what kind of team you have, how many people you have working on it, because and what your goals are as well. I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all kind of virtual experience for study abroad or for internships. There's like so much that you have to take into account. And also like who your audience is. Is your audience someone who doesn't have a secure internet connection? Well, what would you send them? Would you send them a series of videos on like, a CD or something that they can put into their computer and watch those? is it someone who you're going to send them like a whole VR rig and build this thing in VR, which then you need like a large team of, you know, writers, programmers, animators, 3D modelers. Are you going to do that? Are you going to do a smaller VR experience that you can use like Google Cardboard for and you can put your phone on? Is it going to be an AR experience? Like, there's so many different factors to take into account that you really need to have a solid vision of whatever program you're going to do before you know or can infer. You'll never know for sure, but before you can have an estimate of how effective it's going to be. Or that's what I think, anyway.
Yeah, one size fits all is perfect in a way to put it, Sophie. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's and that's the thing. Hey, and Sophie has been working closely with us on the remote cam, and so we know, you know, the struggles that are going to occur, and this will be a great learning experience to see where it can go too. So we're hoping to get that, and then as Sophie said, also, you know, the different types of virtual programs you can do obviously affects it, and we're hoping to start some of our own, like Brian talked about, and we'll keep everyone updated on those. Anyone else have anything to say? I again don't want to go too far over our time here.
Can you just give us a brief on your concerns with the school district that you work for? I'm curious on a high school level how they're dealing with that. And then Mohammed, well, if Edith, if you can come on here, Mohammed, to answer your question, the difference between our standard TEFL and premium is we actually have a new practicum that we just started this past month. So we have group lessons with this high school here in Japan, and for teaching practice, we actually are linking the TEFL graduates with them, with a coach, and you actually get online experience, so you can put your experience, and we'll give you a letter of recommendation after you complete the practicum. So the premium course comes with both the actual TEFL course and the practicum. That's the difference.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Edith, there you are.
Hi, yeah, sorry. You guys can hear me okay, hopefully?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so I work as a resident sub at my local high school, and the same exact concerns that Sophie was making are what we are discussing as well, because not everyone has the same access to those materials and resources. And so we have like half of the school getting packets from the district, and then we have the other half working from home on actual laptops. It's the time where, sorry, forgive me, so nervous. It's to the point where the schools are offering laptops for all of their students, but they're still having to think about the Wi-Fi connection, things like that. So they're looking into purchasing, buying school Wi-Fi for those students as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Edith, I'll resonate with you there too as a fellow teacher. And this, I don't want to go too much into it because we could hold another topic.
Yeah.
But I was reading articles recently about the income in education inequality in relation to income just growing more and more, obviously huge right now, because they don't, you know, the people that don't have laptops or Wi-Fi. And it's really a big problem. I'm sure where you are, we're everywhere. Here in LA, where I am, it's definitely. And so that is a huge thing to think about for us too, and when we create our programs and accessibility. And in fact, in our remote camp, one part of the experience is talking about that. And so hopefully we could make that, you know, even a potential theme of future camps, because that is a huge thing that everyone's dealing with. Yeah. And I wish you luck too dealing with that, because it is super tough.
Yeah, it is.
And accessibility already was a problem, and now it's even more so.
It's just kind of having to work around it, or coming up with better solutions. And it's just, you know, as we get closer to the start of the school year, it's just something that's coming up, and everyone's kind of scrambling to get done so that things are on time. And it's just, you know, everyone's frustrated at this point.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out where everyone's at.
Yeah, and I've gone ahead and written this down as a potential topic for a webinar. I think this would be a fantastic one, because it applies to, I mean, education in general, but it applies to our ESL and our abroad programs are becoming virtual, definitely. So thank you for writing this discussion. Anyone else want to share? I guess we're going over time here. and we wanted to cap it at an hour. Or Brian, do you have anything else?
Good. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, that's a very big thing. So many hurdles right now, so many challenges. Thank you.
Yeah,
everybody. I really enjoyed this webinar, and thanks to everybody for participating.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. We were really excited when we had, like I said, only about 20 people sign up, and we said, well, not everyone's going to show. We're going to have some really great discussions. And then we came in, we had all graduates, so it took a turn, but I actually really enjoyed this, and I think we talked about some really relevant stuff, and it's really got me thinking about our future programs too. And all of you that attended, please stay in touch with us via email, and of course, if you're doing the remote camp, we'll talk about that too. But thank you again for taking time out of your weekend, whether it's late at night like Muhammad or really early like Brian, or just an afternoon for me in PST. But yeah, thank you everyone so much.
Thank
No
you.
worries. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yeah, have
Good
a
day,
great weekend. Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Slash
Yeah.
night
Thank
slash.
you.
Thank you. We'll keep you in touch on the next webinar. Enjoy your weekend.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.